Hi, this is Josh Buden for HUDmanager.com. In this video, I will analyse the Donk bet flop HUD statistic. Donk bet flop is defined as the percentage of the time your opponent bets flop out of position after you raised pre-flop. It is called a donk bet because originally the bet was viewed as a bad play that only a poor player would make, as they are betting into the pre-flop aggressor. However, the donk bet can be a good strategy as long as you balance weak, medium and strong hands into your donk betting range. This statistic, it is vital to use the HM3 note-taking function to take notes whenever you get to showdown versus a flop donk bet. Without an idea of the types of your hands your opponent donk bets with, the statistic is almost useless. For example, if your opponent has a donk bet percentage of 30, this could support a value only range, or it could be bluffs only, or a mixture of both. So you need to take those notes to gauge what their donk bet flop percentage means and what the range is. In the absence of any information early in a match against an opponent, I would go with the general population tendency that a donk bet is weak hands and bluffs most of the time. If your opponent has a high donk bet flop percentage, anything over 40% or so, you should look to bluff raise more often with your weakest hands, as they are more likely to be bluffing. And likewise, you should also just smooth call with your value hands to allow them to continue barreling in later streets. If your opponent rarely donk bets, that is under 15% or so, you should give them more credit, especially on lower boards where they may look to be value betting and protecting their hand against vulnerable overcards on later streets. Remember that your opponent's donk bet range affects their check calling and check raising range. If your opponent donk bets, say, a large portion of their value range, it means their checking range is automatically very weak, and you should look to auto c-bet a high percentage of the time when they check. Likewise, if your opponent donks as a bluff a lot, this strengthens their checking range, and you should look to check back medium strength and weak hands sometimes, and look to delayed c-bet on turn instead of betting flop. So in this hand here, I raise pre-flop with Queen 8-6-5 single suited, and my opponent donk bets pot on the flop. As we can see, his donk bet percentage is 32%. He's elected 18 out of 56 opportunities to donk bet. We have a reasonably high sample size. This 32 isn't overly high, but it's not low either. And so this is where it's crucial that you look at the notes that you've taken. And I had notes that this opponent liked to trap strong hands, and I'd caught him donk betting weak before. Now on a board like Jack-Jack-4, or a paired board, there's not many combinations of value hands. And for someone who looks to trap, a donk bet pot is more likely to be a bluff. So here, given we only have a very weak holding, we can't really call his bet. I think the best thing to do here is to rebluff, given our notes and also the reasonable donk bet flop percentage. So we just raise smallish to 32 and we get the fold. In summary, the donk bet flop statistic is useful in gauging your opponent's entire flop strategy, including not only their donk bet betting range, but also their checking range and their check raising range. So I'd strongly recommend incorporating the donk bet flop stat into your HUD.